And welcome back to another episode of the Circle of Knowledge podcast. I am your host, John Kovach Jr., founder of the Champion Circle Networking Association. And today I'm working from a mobile office, as you guys are following along in the episodes. 2 episodes ago, I was in Mesquite, Nevada, where I was traveling across the country. And today I am landed in San Diego, where we will be having a book signing event this weekend at Barnes & Noble, where we will be signing books and meeting people face to face over the book of the 13 Steps to Riches. So that's going to be a really fun event. And we got a few celebrities flying into town for that event as well, which will be absolutely fun. But given the fact that we are live, you're also listening to this on whatever podcast channel you listen to podcasts, whether it be iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or more. There's so many opportunities for you to get involved in the Circle of Knowledge podcast. Number one is to obviously connect with me. If you connect with John Kovach Jr. on any social media channel, I respond. I work with VAs, but I'm the one who's responding. And so if you want to ask a question or invite somebody to be on our show, or if you're interested in being on our show, just connect with me, and that's the way it goes there. But also the way to get involved in the Circle of Knowledge podcast is to join us on our live show. And ask questions to these amazing authors, mentors, business owners, and the peers in business that I get to bring in and literally sit front row and ask questions. And just a reminder again, this podcast started from the basement of our apartment, and we were huddled around a little microphone, all just to discuss the topics and knowledge that came from books, that came from articles, that came from amazing perspectives. And today that's evolved to interviews and opportunities for myself to learn and inquire more about knowledge and how to apply it. Today you have the opportunity to hear from someone who I just met, and I've met through the various podcasting channels, but I'm very impressed. And not just anyone comes onto this show. We vet them. We go through their profiles. We learn more about them. And this individual has quite the unique experience. I can't wait to introduce you to Tracy Gunn. She is on a mission to help as many small business owners get higher valuations so that they can retire with a higher payout. An expert in helping businesses and creating the exit plans for your business. Tracy wasn't always an expert in business, though. She says in her bio that she used to have a business with a negative valuation herself, but she actually got it. Here's the joke. She says it got so bad that she actually was looking to pay somebody else to take her business. But that's all turned around. That's all amazing. And I can't wait to learn more about it, as we've had many people on this show, very few opportunities we've had to talk about the topic of finding your business in an exit position and also to plan for your exit. Tracy, welcome to the Circle of Knowledge podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Welcome. Hello from New Hampshire.
That's right. Hello from New Hampshire. And you sound great. You look great. And the internet is awesome. So we're ready to roll.
Hooray. So I'm glad.
And I'm so excited. And what I do on the show is obviously I want to pour into you. But the first question I ask is a little bit of an open-ended question. So I hope you're ready. The first question is, we want to know how you became to be who you are today. Like, tell us your background. Did you always grow up in New Hampshire? How did you get where you were at? And why are you the way you are today?
Oh, wow. That's quite a story, but I'll do a really short version.
And don't worry, I'll interject. So
go cool, good. Okay. Tell me when you need to. So I was actually a homeschool mom from New York. I stayed home for 14 years. And my now ex-husband was involved in 9/11, and that's what moved us to New Hampshire. Thankfully, he was a survivor, and but we moved to New Hampshire to kind of get away from the scariness of buildings falling on you and having some peace of mind. And so fast forward a little bit, and my husband had some struggles with PTSD and things. And in that moment, I wanted to create something for myself. My kids all went to school and I was like floundering a little. And I thought, I'm going to create something that's mine, that I get to control what happens in my own little happy world. So I created my first business, which was Life is Sweet. So I figured if I said it enough, I would remember. And that was a candy store. And so in that chaos and crazy, I created something that created like an amazing opportunity for me, but also allowed me to connect with other people. And that was my first business, right? And then I created a couple more after that, because that's what happens. Shiny objects and serial entrepreneurship takes hold. So I created 2 restaurants after that, and then a second candy store. And so short story is, I got so far in that I was kind of burnt out and overwhelmed, right? Working. I know most of your listeners probably can relate to this on some level. Hopefully they're better than me, but that the idea that I was working 7 a.m. till 2 a.m. every day, and just ready and done mentally. And I went to sell. I was like, this is my big exit. I'm just going to exit. I'm going to sell. And then the broker's like, well, they're not really worth anything. And I'm like, what? Like, how is that possible? And so I cried a little bit, I'll be honest. And then, like every entrepreneur, like I pivot, and I fixed it, figured out how to fix it, shortcutted it. And I actually, punchline is I found a buyer in 3 months because I fixed the things. So after I exited a couple of those, I still have my candy store. Yay. But I really just became passionate about wanting people to not feel the things I felt, and not wanting to see all these amazing businesses just go extinct because they're burnt out or tired or ready to retire, but that there's a different way. And that if you take a little time, it doesn't have to be a long time, it doesn't have to be 10 years, but it's great if it is, to be able to get an exit. So yeah, that's like my short story. So yeah, that's what I do.
Phenomenal. Well done. That was like, if we were timing it, that was like 3.5 minutes. That
I
wrapped
did
it
good
all.
then. Yeah.
And there's so much to that, because your story is powerful. And
Mm.
many of my listeners are probably wondering, well, either they're struggling or they're not, or they're going to that next phase of business.
Mhm.
I think that there's so much to just delve into here. But number one is I was really impressed by the story and honestly the humor behind it, because I was willing to get rid of something and pay you to take it on, because it was
Yeah.
feeling that bad.
Mhm.
But you
Uh-huh.
do, as an entrepreneur, you pivot. And I want to ask you, because you have such a charismatic vibrance, and
Yay. Thank you.
and it's easy, and it's easier for that charisma to help teach a lot of my listeners,
Mhm.
which is,
Yeah.
where does that mindset of, well, I've got to pivot, so I'm just going to pivot, like, where does that mindset come from?
I think it's just natural in the entrepreneurial spirit, right? And I mean, I think this all happened for me, that wanting to exit prior to COVID, but then COVID, right, on top of that. And I think that this idea of like, you want to create something from nothing, that entrepreneurial spirit. And then, okay, you're so far in, you're like, I've got to make this work. Right. And so we get little setbacks and we kind of like get deflated for a second. But then usually I think like 95% of us just bounce back and think, okay, how can I fix this? Right. And that's life. I mean, I think that's a muscle that especially entrepreneurs, we strengthen over time, right? Every adversity makes us stronger and more adaptable and more capable of overcoming the next challenge. And that's really all that it was for me. It was the next challenge, right? And I was already burnt out and tired and, yes, ready to pay. Like if someone had said, I'll give you $100, I would have said, done, sold, you got it. Because I was just so tired and just feeling stuck. Right. And I think some of that is mental. So much of what we do in businesses are mental. Where are we? Do we think it's possible? Have we given up? Do we not believe in ourselves anymore? And there's a whole process in there, right? And then also shiny object syndrome of like, well, maybe I'll find the next thing that helps me to get through this piece, right? Whether that's buying another mastermind or another book or another thing, right? But I do think that's innate in most of us. as entrepreneurs, and it's what sets us apart, which is why I love entrepreneurs and I love business. I love it.
I love your energy and I love this exciting conversation. Before we jump into just the how to and the process and the knowledge about your business, I think many young business owners are probably thinking, just like we all do when it comes to our regular job, like, you know what? Retirement is so far away. It's not something I want to think about. It's not something that I want to even just like entertain in my mind, because it's just not like within reach. But I want to ask you, like, how important is it for us to be planning for either the sell or the transition of our business, whether that be a year from now or 20, 30 years from now?
I think it's 100% important. Like before you even start the business, have an idea of how you want to exit. I deal with a lot of clients that I love, and I love their stories and how they started. I would say 99.5% of them never thought about their exit other than their plan that was to sell, right? Most of us sacrifice and give up time and families, like and events and all this sacrifice to put into your business like a child, right? We raise them up, we give, and the hope is that they'll go off, they'll be their own and eventually give back to us. And most people, I think, build from the perspective, well, someday I'll sell, and they set it on the shelf, right? I'll deal with that then. But if you started right from the get-go, and it can adjust, right? It's in your business plan if you make one. A lot of people don't. But the idea of like, okay, where is my end goal? Whether it's give to your children, sell to your employees, like liquidate, whatever it is. But if you know where you're going, like if I'm going from New York to Disneyland, how I get there is maybe not as it's affected by where I'm going, right? I might not go to Florida, go to California, right? So I'm like choosing my steps with that end in sight, even if it's 20, 30 years out. And it does, just by having it fixed as a point, it affects and helps you choose as you grow. I hope that makes sense. So having that end sight helps you filter what you're doing, right? And it helps you decide whether or not to go in a direction, right? So if I'm heading to California, I may not decide to detour to Florida unless Florida is going to get me a quick direct flight to California, right? It's just helping you decide. And the sooner you know how you want to exit, the better. And people hear exit strategy, exit plan, they get all kind of weirded out because it sounds big and scary. And I am of the mind of like, simple's better. This is the opportunity to dream huge, like all the dreams you have for your business or your children, however you're thinking about this. The dream is big. And so it's like your opportunity to put it on paper and think about how you could get there. And whether or not you get exactly to where you hoped, you at least have that line sight vision of like where you're going, as opposed to this very like chaotic, no clue of where I'm going. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I hit my phone. It's hit my thing.
No, I love that, and I want to dive deeper. But before we do, I just thought of something, and I'm curious. Now you've transitioned to basically creating the playbook and helping businesses create their exit strategies and giving them the tips, tricks, and tools, but also facilitating that. I am curious, what was the transition? You said you owned a candy shop and a couple restaurants now. What was the transition from those businesses to now the let's call it the existential or the ideal process of business? So you go from Basically, it's we go from candy shop to food industry
Right.
to coaching people on business exit strategy.
Right.
What
Yeah.
what's that transition like? And do you sometimes miss like the smell of candy, or what was it like to go from one thing to the other?
Well, I'm still somewhat involved in my candy
Oh,
store.
good. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
and so there's a couple of different ways, and we can jump into it, but there's different ways to exit, right? So I found a buyer for my big, giant, enormous restaurant. Then I found someone who was going to earn in as a partner for my candy store because I didn't want to run that anymore. And then I had like a lease negotiation issue with my other restaurant. So I wound up liquidating that one. So there's all different ways to exit. But the bottom line for me was like, now that I knew that I could work smarter, not harder, and I didn't want to ever be burnt out again, I started to think about how can I do this? I have a grandbaby and another one on the way. And I thought, gosh, how can I do this in a way where I have the freedom to travel? I have time. I can make a huge impact and do great things. Plus, I was also like impassioned and emboldened because I had this experience. I am not someone who's been, a business consultant for 30 years and things. I have a partner who's that, which is amazing. But like my story is the hook. It's the connector because most people in business are going to relate to me. There are unicorns out there where they've got it all together and everything's going swimmingly and they have their end in sight and everything's going according to thing, but they're not. They're unicorns, right? They're not most of us, right? And so if I could do it, running 4 businesses, anybody can do it. It's just a matter of not knowing, number one, about it, and number two, not knowing how, right? And the importance. And so that's kind of how I made the transition. And honestly, in that process, I feel like God really like led me through a lot of what I'd call kerfuffles and stressors to get there. But I think it's a super important mission. Can I share a statistic with you? And statistics are not always super fun. I'm going to share 2. Number one, in the next 5 years, probably closer, 10 to 12 million small business owners are going to sell or liquidate because they're
Wow.
baby boomers. It's time, right? 10 to 12 million. Okay, so that's cool. If they're already, I mean, great for them, right? They're going to get their big exit, not be Walmart greeters because they can't like exit. Okay, cool. Except only 10% of businesses actually sell.
Hmm.
So where does that leave our country, our economy, those business owners? So if I don't say something, if I don't get on the megaphone, tell my story, share my thing, get other people excited about exiting and preparing, what happens? Right? And I know that's a huge like thing, but that's what made me passionate about like, okay, I may not be a 30-year veteran of consulting, but it's important and it's important for all of us. So if I can say and do, woohoo, so I'm on board.
I love that, and the statistics actually helped me a lot because I don't know a percentage of people sell their businesses versus just hang
Yeah.
up the cleats. And I think that's fascinating too to understand that most people go into business for the immediate need and gratification, which is we need
Mhm,
income, we have an
mhm,
idea, we're really
mhm.
good at this, we can do this. They don't plan
Yeah.
the years that they plan to have it. They don't plan the who's going to run the company when I'm dead or when I can't do it
Mhm,
anymore. And
mhm,
it,
mhm.
it's so fascinating. And bringing that to perspective really helps me understand that wow, there's so much more to this
Mhm,
than we need. And if you're planning for
mhm.
your life, like for retirement, you should probably also plan for the things that you are currently involved in too. So there's a
Right,
life in the
right,
entities that we take on.
right. And that's just retirees. That's not so that those statistics are like pre-COVID, and then COVID happened, which was a whole other thing. But then also that doesn't include like health. You have it like, what would have happened to my businesses as a personal example if I had gotten, hit by a bus, or like had a stroke, or had a heart attack, or, broke my leg, or all of those things, or like gotten a divorce, or, had a child that was really sick. Like, these life things happen and we adapt. But like, if you disappeared from your business for just 1 month, what would happen?
Mm.
And how do you fix that so it's not catastrophic, right? And doing those things help you to be exitable, right? Yeah, the big picture is, okay, someday I'm going to hand this baby over to somebody else, and can it stand on its own without me?
Mm.
Right? Because most of us don't want a long, tenuous 5-year exit plan from a business that we sell, right? Like, most of us, like, when we sign on the dotted line, we're like, woohoo, here you go, right? How does that not fall apart? And how do we plan for that? I mean, which is exciting thing. So like, one of my taglines is like, you've done the hard part. You started a business, right? You've learned all the things. You figured out how to do all the things and juggle and have a life and not have a heart attack, not like cave, not quit, right? You've learned all those things. You've done the hard part. This is the easy, fun part. If you think
Mm.
about it that way, that's a mindset.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And thank you for bringing that into this context, because there's so much more to business than just meets the eye. You literally need to develop a mindset of outwardly thinking, outward view, futuristically thinking,
Okay.
and planning ahead.
Mhm.
That's a perfect segue and transition into the nuggets of knowledge that Tracy
Ah,
would like to share with us, which I'm excited to learn more about. And I think we've already been kind of dabbling in it. Like, you
yeah.
really need to plan ahead, but
Mhm.
the microphone is yours. But what is just the important nugget of knowledge that I think every listener and every person should have?
Okay. So number one, okay, so most people are going to be like me. We're going to hit a place where they're going to want to sell.
Hmm.
Okay. And for most, it's going to be the first time they thought about selling. Okay. So they're going to be in unfamiliar territory. They're going to be like, okay, what do I do? And so the natural, and I'll compare it to like selling a house, right? If you've never sold a house before, you think, can I do this on my own? Who do I reach out to? So that most of them go to a broker. Okay. And now brokers have their place. Now, in every state, the rules are different about selling. If there's real estate entailed, always have to have a real estate broker, which is why most of them become business brokers, right? So that's the majority. There are specific business brokers. That's all they do is sell businesses. And chances are that's a bigger company, right? But so I would say number one golden nugget is the broker is there to help you get your feet under you, right? It's the first step if you want. That's usually free, which is great, to give you an idea or a sense of where you are. So, but what I found, and this is where I hope to bridge the gap a little, is that when they come back with maybe not the answer you were hoping for, mine was zero, but most people's, right, are going to be somewhere in there. And we can talk about how that works, but that they're looking through a very specific lens from, like most of us, a selfish perspective.
Hmm.
Okay. Their job is to evaluate your business and decide whether or not they can sell it and whether it's worth their time. Okay. That is not necessarily the best lens for you to decide whether your business has value. Okay. So if you're not confident in what you have, that could derail you and really hurt. So go at that from that perspective. Okay. So that's golden number. And so for me, it did knock me for a little bit of a loop because I was praying that was my answer to prayer. Right. But I again went back to that pivot mindset, or like, okay, this is just the next challenge. I believed in what I was doing enough to know that his lens that he looked through was not the only lens.
Hmm.
Okay. He also didn't give me any direction. It was kind of like, sorry, right? And so I had to figure out my direction. So then the flip side of that is there's always opportunity in that message from them. They're not going to lay out for you what you should fix or what you could do to improve. That's on you to figure out, or we can help you. That's totally cool. But that they're looking just, I think understanding that they're looking at it from one view and it's a
Hmm.
selfish view is really important to keep in mind. Okay. And that this is an art. How you value a business is very, very, it's not concrete. One way is not necessarily value. So
Right.
for my example, my restaurant, the big one that I was looking forward to getting rid of, and I found the buyer for, I had $800,000 like worth of sales in 2 years. And this prior to COVID, but I had all this upcoming revenue. I had customer loyalty programs. Now there were things I fixed to improve that, but he didn't consider all of that. He looked at my bottom line and that was it. Okay. So I just think the nugget number one is brokers are great. It's what your natural inclination is going to be, but do not take all of their information as all the information. If
Okay.
that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so that would be golden nugget number one. Number two, that's your opportunity, right? We as business owners love opportunity. We're like, ooh, I see something. I could totally use that, right? And so for me, that enabled me to take a look like, okay, what is he not seeing that I see? And what could I fix so it'd be evident to all? So somebody shared this with me once, like, okay, I'm going to show. This is my cell phone, the iPhone, whether you're iPhone or Android. I don't want to argue about that part, but my iPhone, nobody has to convince me that that's worth a purchase. Okay. I don't have to show you all the things. It just is evident. And I needed to make my business so neat and tidy that anybody could see that it had value.
Right.
Okay. And I think everybody taking a look, taking a step back in their own business can find opportunities to do that better. Right. And whether that's collecting emails, having a list, having a loyalty program, having inventory management, having a sales funnel or like a way and knowing exactly how you get your sales and how to improve them and whether you can turn that on, turn that off, all of those things have value on their own and tidying all those up so that it's in a nice, pretty package. So it's
Right.
clear. Does that? Yeah. So that's kind of what I did. So that's golden nugget number two is I just took an outsider perspective. And golden nugget number three, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? That's an old saying. I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's the reality is that more than one way to do it. Your business is unique. Nobody is better prepared to improve and fine tune your business than you. And there's not just one way to do it. There's not one way to exit. Same thing, right? And so you can really, by taking like a step back and looking, see the value and the hidden golden nuggets for yourself and apply them. And I mean, what we do now is help people to see them and implement them. That's what we do. I mean, that's really as simplified as I can say is we help them to see, to know that there's potentially a problem, to understand the situation a little better, and third, how to take their initial valuation and multiply it simply and quickly. Because again, it doesn't have to be a 20-year plan. It's great if you have that kind of time, but most of the people that I'm talking to where it's now on their radar are older and they're ready. So they want immediate. So yeah. So I mean, that's like those are my little golden nuggets. And that really that anybody can do. If you did the hard part already, this is the easy part, and this is the fun part. And what I am finding that a lot of people who have this big plan to sell because they're so whether they're retiring or burnt out or whatever, that they have this opportunity at the end of maybe even keeping it because they're so far removed from the running. It's like their heyday, golden years of being able to collect without having to do. So maybe they won't sell, right? That's a new fun problem to have, right? Do I want to sell or not? So yeah, I mean, those are kind of like my little big golden nuggets, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
I love that. And I love that you itemize them, right?
Yeah.
There's three main things you need to learn and apply.
Mm,
I guess the only natural question I can have is based on the knowledge that we now have, the
mhm,
information that you've now presented,
mhm.
what's just one really good, simple action step that the listeners could take to take this information and to put it into movement?
Okay. So, what I would encourage everybody listening today to do was to imagine, it doesn't have to be a horrible story, but imagine they are incapacitated and unable to be at work. And I mean Zoom, I mean logging in online, I mean everything. What are the things that if you disappeared for a month, right? What are the things that are going to tank your business? And could it survive the month without you? Could payroll happen? I mean, I still do payroll for my candy store, right? Nobody else is a signer because I'm still the sole on, the single member here. Those are things that even I still haven't adjusted. But making a list of because whether you're going to exit or life just happens, those are things, those are gaping holes you really should take care of immediately. Like I would say, before the end of this week, figure out the 5 top things that you have to do to make your business salvageable over the next month if you disappeared for a month. I would say that's the biggest action step. And by doing that, you're going to start to see things a little differently than the forward momentum that most of us are focused on. Hope that helps.
Boom. I thought that was brilliant. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing that with my listeners. Uh, I hear it loud and clear. And it's
Oh,
super
good.
exciting for me to say, start planning ahead and
Mm,
build an exit strategy. But I think what most people are going to want to know is like, where do you start? You've done a really great
mm.
job of educating us and giving us that idea. And
Yep.
then also showing us also like, think of the extreme, like you definitely, what will be the first thing that tanks your business if you can't go to work for a month? And
Yeah.
I know this because I've had, uh, don't ask why, but I've had COVID like 3 times, and I
Yeah.
have been unable to work in many aspects,
Mhm.
and travel and
Mhm.
funerals and all these things that get in the way
Yeah.
of business. They all stack up, whether it's consecutively a month or
Right.
the total of a month. And it's
Mhm.
remarkable that business operates the way you set it up. And so we
Yeah.
need to plan ahead. And man,
Mhm.
no better information to young entrepreneurs, business owners,
Yes.
or even the executive C-suite than to
Mhm.
ask, what are you planning for?
Yeah.
And
Right.
thank you,
Contingency
Tracy.
plans, right? Contingency plans,
Right.
right? Because we don't know, I'll be honest, like I had 2 restaurants in the midst of COVID. Did I
Mm,
expect to be, when they said we're closing for 2 weeks, my heart died. And I thought, we won't survive. And
mm,
one of them was closed for 4 months. I mean, and so I just think, again, we are so very often, my 100% me, that we are so caught up in the everyday and just that we are not thinking about what might be coming, the bus that's coming, out of nowhere that derails us on the way, right? And so I hope everyone takes that to heart and just thinks about that just a little bit. Because we are the driver of our business, but we don't have to be all things in our business. Ooh,
mm.
that's a good tagline.
Yeah.
Boom.
Drop that one. Oh, well, this has been exciting. This has been educational, and this has been very, very helpful, especially for me. I mean, I do this so that I can learn, and then I share what I learn with the
Mm,
listeners. But I'm just very grateful for the information you provided, and I love that it comes from a perspective of this is what I've done, and this is how I've done it, and this is what I
yeah,
know, and that's exciting to me because
yeah,
most people who have business background based on how they got there, that's the stuff that I want to know. Those are the stories that I want to obtain.
yeah.
Those are the informations that I'm really excited to gain knowledge of. And thank you for your perspective, your stories, your vulnerability, and all of the things you added to the context of this conversation. I believe, well, I want to send my listeners to contact you. I put it here down in the ticker at the bottom. But if you're listening to the show, not watching the show, you can go to howtoexityourbusiness.com, where you can learn more about Tracy, her business, and how she's helping people in creating those strategies. Now, I believe that you wanted to give away a free gift or a free download to my listeners. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah. So one of the things, because people get a little freaked out when you say exit strategy, it sounds so fancy and like serious, right? And so I wanted it to be kind of like this fun experience. So I created a document I'd be happy to share with everybody, and really just walks you through how to think about things and how to get it down on paper, and how you formalize it. That's, completely up to you individually. But this is a really fun worksheet to just get you to dream a little bit and really kind of narrow down and think about things that you haven't maybe considered about your eventual exit. So yeah, I'd be happy to share that. I have a link. It's like a Google Doc, and you'll have unlimited access forever. And as we improve it, you can always come back and check it out. So that's just like a little fun thing to get you starting to think. Because I think sometimes it's just about, I didn't think about this until I was in crisis, right? I was in crisis, I was burnt, and I didn't think about it before. So if I could help other business owners to start to think about it before the crisis, right? In the great fun times, it's a good thing just to have on the radar, right? So the education piece, that initial education piece, starts the thought process, and then we go down the rabbit holes of all the things. But this is the first part, like starting to plan and think about your eventual exit, whether that's this year, which could be, or in 30 years.
I love that. Thank you. And it's always great to get active live feedback from our audience. This is my friend Mateus. They're actually they're business owners down in Brazil. And
wow, fun.
Yeah, this is really incredible information. I think I've had Mateus on the show as well, but
Cool.
they love to hear that. So thank you, Tracy, and thank you for pouring into us with that information, and also for providing that resource. That's really, really exciting for me, especially since I'm a Google Doc junkie. I love to dive into that stuff as well. But any last or parting words that you would love to share with anyone? We've just been so enlightened, and I'm really excited. And I know that, just by talking about the topic, this is one of those legal conversations where it's like, before we get too deep into it and breach the surface, you don't want to bore the audience, which you would never do, but we definitely didn't cover all that is to be covered.
No,
there's so much more to this. There's probably masterclass upon masterclass of information on how to do this. Yeah. But I love how you, Tracy, make it simple. You've made it relevant, and you've made it easy for me as a business owner to say, Tracy says I can do it. I've got confidence that I can plan in my exit strategy. So I really appreciate that perspective.
Oh, well, I'm so glad. And I try. So we deliver a masterclass, and we do have a new cool form that, again, if somebody wants the next thing, like it's I'm going to pop it onto the website because it's brand new. We just acquired this tool where it basically will evaluate like your business. It takes like 5 minutes to fill out the form, and it will give you not only like where your score is, like in the realm, but of like each driver of your business, but how you can improve it and how that will impact your eventual exit, which I was like so excited to find this tool. I did not write it. But the other part is I wanted to share is like, this is a judgment-free zone. Like in business, we're so hard on ourselves, and we compare, we look at Facebook and think like what they portray as reality. And the simple fact is we are all in the weeds a lot. I mean, we all let's give ourselves a break here. We show up every day, we do the work, we probably have given ourselves one of the hardest jobs ever, right? Which is owning everything and being ultimately responsible for everything. So that's why, the document that I'm sharing is like super like laid back and chill. Like this is not a fancy doc. Don't be impressed with all my Google expertise. It is just supposed to be the conversation starter for you in a comfortable way where you're not going to be hard on yourself, right? And just to start to dream and think. Because most of us, I think when we start our businesses, we had on our like goggles of eternal optimism about all the things that were going to be and all the rainbows and unicorns that within a year we'd have, and that life and reality is not always that, right? And so I mean, I'm like super proud, and like entrepreneurs are my people. I'm one of you, and like we dream so big, and the world is better because we're here and doing and risking. So like I do not want my tool to be in any way, shape, or form a negative impact on you. I want it to be like an enlightening, optimistic, dream building tool.
Awesome. That was it. That was amazing. Thank you. And I love the vocabulary you used. That I'm going to replay that because that was
Cool.
that was really great. Well, Tracy, thank you so much. All the way from New Hampshire, resided in New York City. Thank you for
Yeah.
all you provided, and we really appreciate you being on the show. And for my listeners, take advantage of the freebie she just gave you. Go download, go get into the weeds of that document and just watch the amazing stuff that's going on, and connect with Tracy. Connect with Tracy because she's got a great business mindset on how to get this thing done, which again, at the end of the day, we need to take advantage of the time that we have and to plan ahead. And that being said, I just want to thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you, John, for having me. I was like, I hope I do a good job for you. So hopefully everybody enjoyed. Hopefully it wasn't hard to listen to, and hopefully they take some action.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Take action, you guys. This is by far the most important principle of it all. And I'll close out the show by saying what I always say, which is you have everything you need because it's within you already. You need to take up the energy and the action necessary to make things happen in your life. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for that ability to do so. You can do what it takes. And with that being said, this has been another episode of the Circle of Knowledge podcast. Join us next time where we'll have more introductions, more opportunities, and even more guests on our show who will speak into their expertise and teach us a little bit of knowledge that will allow us to take action in a very positive way in our lives. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time. Thank you.